Welcome back, everyone, to another enlightening episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, where we get to dive deep into spirituality, love, the messy experience of being a human genuinely on this planet, and the expansion of human consciousness. I'm your host, Jessie Herman, and today we have a truly special conversation lined up for you that I absolutely enjoyed and cannot wait for you to dive into. Joining me today are Sheila and Marcus Gillette, spiritual visionaries, authors, and the voices behind the profound wisdom of Theo, a collective of 12 archangels channeled through Sheila since her near-death experience in 1969. For over 25 years together, Sheila and Marcus have guided thousands on their path to higher consciousness, self-love, and divine connection. Today, we're exploring their latest book, The Art of Relationships, Discover the Magic of Unconditional Love, and diving into the transformative power of love, vulnerability, and healthy boundaries in our relationships. We're also going to touch on the role of spiritual guidance and channeling in personal growth, the importance of honoring harmonious endings, and what it truly means to cultivate unconditional love, not just in romance, but in every aspect of life. Stay tuned also because Sheila and Marcus have a special gift for you, a free guided meditation that will help you open up your heart and align with the energy of love. Plus, all the details on how you can grab a copy of The Art of Relationships and start integrating these teachings into your own life. But before we dive in, I have exciting updates. I'll be in Florida and Colorado very soon for 2 incredible live events, bringing Vagrian's wisdom to audiences in a way that's truly transformative. So if you're feeling called to connect in person with me and to join an event where you will have a deep channeling experience and deepen your spiritual journey, I would love to see you there on March 22nd in Colorado or on April 13th and 14th in Orlando, Florida. More details are in the show notes, or you can visit me right away at www.jpherman.com/events to grab your limited tickets right away. Now, without further ado, let's welcome, oh my God, the amazing Sheila and Marcus Gillette, as well as Theo. I really do hope you absolutely enjoy this episode as much as I did.
Yeah.
So welcome, Sheila and Marcus. It's amazing to have you on the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. I'm so thrilled and so excited to be talking with you today and to have a chance to find out all about your new book and all about your relationship. Oh, I'm such a nosy person. And I saw you guys in Boulder, and what you didn't know, you did know that you were in the room next to me. But what you didn't know is that sometimes you get off the elevator just as I came up the staircase, right? So I would see you guys when you didn't know that you were being seen as a couple. And it was so sweet. And I put it in my little safe of relationship goals for my own personal vortex of desires. So I admire you guys so much. You know, of course, I only get a sneak peek of your relationship. I'm sure it has its challenges like any other relationship. But yeah, that's just what I want to share. So it's so thrilling for me to be able to talk to both of you and to share this with our listeners and viewers and have them have a little bit of a glimpse into that too. So welcome to the show.
We're happy to be here. This is great. Thank you for inviting us.
And thanks for the compliment.
Yeah.
I kind of was like, should I tell them? Yeah.
I guess we got to be on our best behavior now is what I'm
yes,
hearing.
you do. That's right. So for anyone who's watching or who's listening, who doesn't know who I'm here with, I have the honor of being with Sheila, who's the channel for Theo, who's been channeling for quite a while, and lovely partner Marcus, who is, I guess, the support or the wind beneath the wings type of situation in this duo. And I'm just so excited for you guys to share your story. So Some Kind of Mystic podcast is kind of an origin story type of podcast, right? I have guests who come on who have different stories, expertise in their particular field. Maybe they've had an experience that's brought them to discovering more of themselves. Maybe they are now doing some holistic work in some way, but these are all service to others people who once upon a time were just like anyone who's listening to this show. And once upon a time, maybe didn't know what their path was or didn't know what their gift was or didn't know what their direction was in life. And so I love to have guests on who can then tell the story of how they went from wherever a listener is in this moment to where they've come to now. So please start at the beginning and share a little bit of your story.
So where do we begin?
Yes.
our story where we began together or where we individually began? I mean, that's a
Well,
long story.
it's a long story. Yeah. So, how about the Cliff Notes? Now, I know that the stories, both of these stories, are in part in the book that we're talking about today as well. So, the listener can go and get into the in-depth details and the nitty-gritty, but I really enjoyed both your story of how you met quite a lot because I found that to be very magical. But also, let's start sort of where your souls began to have this journey to come into consciousness to be in service to others.
So my work, I should say, and my exposure in a very deep way to this work happened in time after a near-death experience, which opened me up to becoming a spiritual medium and a direct voice trance channel for the 12 archangels known as Theo. So I've been doing this work for over 5 decades. And so that began my journey into this experience of expansion of consciousness. And then I met Marcus, 29 years ago. And we met because he read my first book. And I say I wrote that book to meet him, sort of.
You were calling him in with your feminine
Well,
wild.
that's what I tell everybody anyway.
Mhm.
But the thing is I always knew that I was supposed to have a male partner, but I would do this work with me. And it just took a little bit of time for us to meet. And then, so here we are, 28 years later, and doing this work together. And it's such a blessing. Marcus?
Yeah, well, Jesse, what happened with how we actually got together was I read Sheila's first book, The Fifth Dimension Channels to a New Reality. And that book, it was talking, I read it 30 years ago. It's 1995. And I became such a fan of Sheila and Theo because of the impact that book had on me at that point in my spiritual journey. That when I had the opportunity to meet her, because I had become friends with a mutual friend in Arizona who used to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Sheila had been living, and she offered to introduce me to Sheila when she came to town to do a channeling engagement, a couple channeling sessions in Arizona. And I jumped at the opportunity to meet her. I thought it'd be great to get to know her a little bit. I was a fan, and little did I know that literally 1 month after that experience of her being in town to do a share Theo, we were engaged.
Wow.
Which is pretty much exactly how it happened. Yeah, there's a lot more to the story, which I know we don't have time for right now, but it was very synchronistic and very magical. And there was a lot of really cool, as you know, from reading the first chapter of the book, where we go into more detail about this, there was some very, very cool, kind of miraculous things, collapsing of time and space, some connection and an out-of-body state. And when things like that start to happen, it gets your attention, that's for sure,
Yeah. So you guys are definitely living the art of relationships, which is the name of the book, and discovering the magic of unconditional love. And I want to talk about that, right? Because unconditional love is a bit of a sticky subject. Now, it doesn't mean not having boundaries, right? So there is that navigational issue that a lot of people face in relationships. Sometimes people stay in relationships because they're thinking, oh, I have to be unconditionally loving, when in fact, maybe that relationship has run its course, and you don't have to stick around when that person is not being a kind person with you. But by the same account, in relationships, unconditional love is such one of those goals that people have. How can I accept and love this person, and more so accept and love myself? So what are your tips and tricks, having been together and married? I mean, if you were engaged after 1 month, married for 30 years, is it? Then, how is that working out?
Well, we made an agreement when we got together that we would talk things out. And we made an agreement if something was more important to the other one than it was to oneself, we'd always go with the one that it was most important to. Things like that. And when we get, when we were in an impasse where we couldn't agree, or, we were fired up and reactive, we had an agreement also, so it wouldn't escalate, to stop and have a do-over. Maybe we spoke unkindly to the other one, which we do. We all do that in our human experience. Even when we don't realize it, or maybe we do, we can say, wait a minute, that didn't come out right. That didn't, where we would say to each other, or the one that was not being very nice would say, could we do this over? That didn't come out the right way. And it just opened the door to have a deeper conversation or greater understanding, because we're both very independent, strong people. But coming back to unconditional love, I think people are confused about that. It doesn't mean collapsing your boundaries at all. What it means is communicating your truth and realizing that's okay. And it doesn't have to be mean or angry, that you could just tell your truth and be open to a discussion. But one of the things I learned about unconditional love when Marcus and I first got together is, we all have little irritants in relationships with each other. And if there was, and we were adult humans living our own lives, coming together to share a life. And so what I realized, if, for an example, the toothpaste cap was off.
Okay, I know this one.
Yes, that he was more important to me than the toothpaste cap. Or if a towel got dropped on the floor, he was more important to me than that towel. The person was more important. And I had a moment of revelation of, gosh, that's unconditional love. The person's more important than that irritant of the moment. Because if he wasn't in my life, would that be okay? No, it wouldn't have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that other stuff would not have mattered.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it gave me that perspective. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it was the man that I loved and I wanted to be in relationship with, but all relationships, everybody that I loved, I realized that I need to hold that for everybody, friends, other family members, because that's the truth. And those of us who have had losses of people close to us have some of that realization that happens, that the person's more important than any kind of frustration or small thing that can be talked about and resolved.
Yeah, I think there's another, for us, well, I'll go back to Theo's definition of who we are, right? So when we ask Theo, who are we really? What they'll tell us is that we are a state of being. It's not a feeling or an emotion. We are a vibrational state of vibrational frequency of unconditional love. That's who we are. That's what, or who God is. We are an aspect of that, Jesse. And so when we asked Theo to define self-love, because through the process of soul integration, which we won't have time to get into today, but that is a process Theo brought forward through Sheila 4 decades ago, maybe 5 decades ago. It's a spiritual process of how to actually love yourself. And that is based on the premise that any thoughts or beliefs that we hold about ourselves that are not unconditionally loving about us are not true. Just not true. And you can work with that in a lot of ways that makes your life amazingly free of drama, of reactivity, and very joyous. It's a beautiful vibration to be in. And when we ask, there's a lot of different definitions of self-love, but one of the definitions of self-love is to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. Mm-hmm. Because what we do is we tend to collapse our boundaries for the acceptance or the love of others.
Right.
And in doing so, we don't show up in our authentic self. When we look at life and we look at the things that we consider to be obligations, what Theo talks to us about, what they invite us to consider is that something that we consider to be an obligation that we're not full-hearted. So they ask us to ask ourselves, are we doing it out of love, which means we're full-hearted, we're really in it, we're going to put ourselves in it, or are we doing it to be loved? And it's a very different vibration. And if the answer is we're doing it to be loved as opposed to doing it out of love, then we're not showing up fully in our hearts, authentically, to do that thing. And I think that's been part of, Sheila and I are really good in our relationship with holding boundaries too, and being very candid and honest and kind and compassionate in establishing and maintaining boundaries as well. And not just with ourselves, but with everybody in our lives.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that particular phrase, because that's the one that I circled like a million times in the book when I was reading it. I said, I got to ask them about that particular phrase about doing it out of love as opposed to trying to get love, which are very different energies. You can even feel it even just as you hear the sentence that, wow, that's really makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you with the boundaries and being frank and candid with people, because if you're not, and even in your book, it talks about the intention of, is this coming from trying to hurt someone, or is this coming from, this is just my truth, etc. So I think that a lot of unconditional love is also trust. It's trusting the other person isn't wanting to hurt you, right? It's really a question of holding your space and going, I'm going to give this person always the benefit of the doubt that they're not out to get me. They're not doing that. They're not leaving the towel on the floor deliberately in order to hurt me, etc., etc. And like you said, I care more about that relationship. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful stuff. So when you guys met, Sheila, was your work already sort of really well known? Because we're talking pre-internet, So did this book arrive to Marcus because it was diffused and there was already a very large following of people and, word of mouth type of thing? Or was it more a question of things taking off after that? How was the trajectory of the work that you do?
Well, since it's the first book, it had a good following, and we didn't have the internet.
No.
So a lot of it was word of mouth. And I had been building over several years a community of people that wanted to talk to Theo. And I was doing a lot of private sessions and traveling extensively, doing smaller groups in different cities as that built. And then Marcus and I met, and that just exponentially grew because then we got the internet. We had a radio show, a terrestrial radio show, which is what you hear over the dial. And then we had an internet radio show with Voice of America. So that grew. And just the opportunity to have discussions like we're having with you today with others who have communities and are building their repertoire of communities. So it's just been a growth and just staying committed to the message and the teaching, which has changed a lot of lives, which the impact has been great. And we're so blessed to be a part of it.
Do you feel like you have a choice?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not so much that you're called and motored to do this every day is sort of like, yeah, I'm going to continue and I could also choose not to type of thing.
I could choose not to, but I won't, because I had a near-death experience and laying in intensive care saying, hey, God, give me a job. I'll do anything. And this is the job that it was called to do. So there have been moments, just like everybody has, where you get exhausted or you think you're not making an impact or a difference, where you go, oh, maybe I won't. I've had those moments over the years, but then I would get a phone call from somebody who had been impacted, whose life had been changed. And those feelings of, I'm too tired, I don't want to do it anymore, would just go away, just melt away. But I also remembered that commitment. When you make a commitment to God, you don't go back on it.
Right. Yeah. Well, interesting. I don't think any of us would be here had we not made a commitment to God in the first place, right?
Yeah, right. But it's something that, could I choose not to do it? Of course I could. We all have choice. Do I want to? No.
Okay. So
I love what I do and the people I work with.
Well, that's great. I love that. Now, Marcus, what's your relationship with Theo?
Oh, gosh, what is my relationship with Theo? It's strong. It's really strong, Jesse. Theo are my mentors, my spiritual mentors. My whole life has changed since I met Sheila. And if you think about what I do for a living, Jesse, I ask questions of 12 archangels. Like that's my,
It's not a bad
that's,
job.
it's not bad work if you can get it, right?
Yeah.
And, Sheila and I have such a good relationship, and we're so close that we both are so passionate and grateful that we get to actually do this work. I mean, this is what we get to show up every morning and do, and we get out of bed and, oh my God, we get to go share Theo and assist in the transformation of people's lives, and I have I guess I call it a kind of a direct line to Theo,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that when I ask Theo for guidance, I hear Theo's guidance. I don't have to go through Sheila. I often get it in water. Oftentimes I'll get it in a hot tub. I'll get it in a shower. Okay. I'll get it in a pool. Somehow water seems to open up a portal for me to Theo. But after working with Theo for almost 29 years now, Jesse, and having asked, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of questions, maybe. I don't even know how to quantify it. They bring me such peace. The teachings have brought me such peace and such joy, and confidence as it relates to working with them and working with Sheila to do what we do and to bring their teachings out to the world.
Oh, that's amazing. And Sheila, do you remember your channeling, or like while you're channeling, you have full recall or not as much?
No, I know it's going on.
Yeah.
I know it's happening, but I don't remember everything that's said unless it's being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm listening back to a recording and I know that.
Right, yeah.
So it's in there, but it's not a total conscious recall.
Yeah, that's the same experience I have with Agrian. So I was going to say that Marcus has the advantage in some ways in that he gets to actually consciously, receive all of this wisdom. Whereas, someone like you or I, we're sitting there and going like, well, I don't know what you guys got up to all day, but I'm happy you had a nice time. Yeah, that's my experience as well. So I've actually never spoken to a channeled entity outside. And I was just going to say about Marcus, it's funny. The only time Vagrin will be communicating directly with me that I can be aware of them is actually also in the shower or the tub. So there's something about that water thing. I never ask them anything, but they might come in with a bit of their, hey, Jess, that thing that you're pretending you don't know. Well, you do know it. And that's only ever in the shower or the bath or whatever it is. So that's interesting that you have that same experience.
There's something about water. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. Yep.
Okay. So would it be possible, Sheila, would you like to do a little bit of channeling so I could ask Theo some questions I had about the book? Is that something that you'd like to do today?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Beautiful. Okay, great.
So it takes just a second.
Sure.
Here we go. It is the beginning, is it not?
Yes. Hi. It's lovely to see you, Theo.
We are appreciative of the opportunity to serve, you may ask.
Yeah. So I was reading the book that you've created with Sheila and Marcus, and I have a couple questions. I'd like to start with, you mentioned a modality of writing down all of the characteristics you'd want in a partner to call in a relationship that's loving. Is there something that you can expand on that, helping people to understand how that works or what they should do specifically if they want to call in a loving relationship?
So what's important that is to write down the qualities that you wish in a relationship. And because all of you know what you don't want. But it's important to know what you do want in defining that. And it's mostly how you would like to feel. But there are actions and interactions that are important as well. So to have that knowledge written so you can look at it and see what's important. The other part of that is recognizing if you're giving that to yourself, if you're being that person to you. Because to have that type of love and to attract it is to be it. Have that belief in yourself and the unconditional love of self that attracts unto itself its likeness.
So that old statement of looking for someone to complete you, that would be completely wrong, ultimately, by this accord.
To some degree, yes, because you're complete in yourself. The new paradigm of a relationship now is not from need, but preference. Each and every one of you can live perfectly well singularly. You can provide for yourselves. There's not a need. There's a desire for interaction, connection, to be a good mirror to one another for one's higher learning of self, and releasing old patterns that do not serve, meaning old beliefs that can be changed about you that are unloving, and in support of that with one another.
It's beautiful. And so in terms of your definition of vulnerability, that also really touched me. What does it mean to be vulnerable in a relationship?
Most people think of vulnerability, the word, as weakness, and it is a superpower. Vulnerability means you're in your truth. You're being authentic. So vulnerability in a relationship is that fear that someone will use your vulnerability, use your truth against you. And possibly it has happened that that's been true. So one feels unseen, unheard. And coming into the acceptance of your own perfection. And what we mean by that is understanding that you are perfect as you are. But what drives humans is a fear of abandonment. That if I show myself and my truth, I will be abandoned because I'm not acceptable, I'm not lovable. And where does that come from? Who inside of you holds those beliefs? It's an integrative process of changing that belief, of knowing that you are lovable, and that you are that being that deserves to be loved and to give love.
So if the person who's listening to this does feel that fear of vulnerability because maybe they have actually deliberately been harmed in the past, what would their strategy be to simultaneously open up into that truth that is them and have a discernment as to, what people look, because there are some people who deliberately do harm. At least that's what seems to be playing out on our planet. So how would one be able to discern that between, okay, I can be vulnerable and still hold that space of boundaries or of self-protection so they are being self-loving in every instance?
So it is to recognize, and this is a soul integrational process that we brought forward many decades ago, that you discover inside of you where those beliefs and fears of abandonment first began. The fear of not being lovable or worthy enough for love. So who inside of you, where did they first feel abandoned and what age? You begin there with that part of self, that aspect of self, that is the one that reacts and shows resistance and fear in those moments of history. So the history, those moments of challenge that you're speaking about, are opportunities of growth. And that's where beliefs begin or are adopted about yourself that are untrue. Those beliefs can be changed. Those events won't. They're your history. But how you view them can change to see how instructive and important in your lineage, your growth, your evolution they were to make you the person you are today. Not in the sense of your limitation, but of strengths. And so you can love that part of self forward to the present, which is a very empowering place to be. And what you'll notice is you will not draw to you those relationships to prove you right in the first place.
Right, because
That's
it's no longer serving you to have that sort of pattern running and to learn that thing. You've learned it on your own.
yes. And
So,
so then the fear of vulnerability will diminish because you won't be holding on to those past patterns.
and without the fear, you know you have the strength to then deal with anything. So those things you would need to deal with just simply don't appear in your reality. I get it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So you did we spoke about this a little bit before we started talking with you, but how would someone know inside of themselves if they're doing something for love in order to achieve love from another, or if it's really coming from their own wanting to give love? Because that can feel, to someone who does maybe have some integration to do, a little bit cloudy in terms of, I don't know how to distinguish between if I'm actually reaching towards this person from an altruistic space or if I'm doing this particular thing because I'm hoping for reciprocal engagement, etc.
It's simple as asking the self,
Mm,
am I doing this for love or out of love? Because behind every action, there's an intention. So what is that intention? Is the intention to have that person love you or like you? Or is it because you love them and you're doing this without a quid pro quo, so to speak? I'll do this and I'll give you this if you give me that. Yes? That's the difference. And it's simply asking the self, what do I expect from this?
I'm feeling like we're evolving in that direction where, there is more giving happening, at least from the people that I get to interact with. I'm very lucky that we have that experience. But what happens? This is my last question for you, but unless you have something else to share, but what happens when a relationship has come to its natural conclusion? You guys talk about having the endings of relationship be holistic and allowing things to have their natural conclusion without, all these fighting or jealousy or whatever's going on that we see a lot of conflict. People who love each other suddenly hate each other. How does one get out of that pattern?
So what you're talking about is a harmonious separation.
That's right. Yeah.
And how that happens is you remember the love. You love this person. There are situations and circumstances and challenges that occurred to grow you both. And you may just be outgrowing the relationship that served its purpose. But most, when that occurs, then they have to seek for a reason to end the relationship because nobody wants to be the bad person to say it's over. So there's a blame. Seeking an opportunity to have a reason to blame the other person for this or that or another thing. And so in that blame game, nobody wins. And it's disharmony that does. So as there is a concluding relationship, a completion of a contract with another, do it with love. Remembering that you love this person. Yes, challenge happens. Yes, you both participated in it. One is not greater than another in the blame game. You all participated for your highest good and growth. And you've grown. Acknowledge the growth that's happened between you and through you. And remember the love. And communicate the truth in a loving way.
Be vulnerable even towards the ending of an interaction. That's beautiful. That's absolutely
Yes.
gorgeous. So anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Maybe there's someone specific that needs to hear what you're about to say next.
So many say, oh, yes, that's good, unless you've been betrayed. Betrayal is difficult, but it still applies in the same way. For one desiring to be soul-centered and in harmony and integral in themselves with peace, what we speak about is the way to achieve that on the inner. So we would encourage each and every one of you to know and to ask yourself, what would love do here? You are complete with your ask.
Yes, thank you so much for being here with us and loving this conversation. Thank you so much.
God's love unto you. Good day.
Good day.
Hi, Jesse. Hi, Marcus.
Hi, Jesse. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Jesse.
She looked giggly like me after.
I always wonder, like, what's going on with you guys right before you come out of trance. It's something is happening. No
Yeah,
doubt.
it's definitely.
Yeah. So it's just a good blessing. That's energetically.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody gave you the gummy, I don't know, the gummies. Get endorphins for a couple seconds right on the other end of it. Yeah. And then you get younger, like you're not aging. So
it's all part of the work.
It is. Right. Well, that was absolutely gorgeous. I love that. That was so much fun. I understand why people like it so much, talking to these non-physical entities, because it just feels so good. I have a couple questions for you, Sheila. How to channel with your eyes open?
Well, I didn't always.
Okay.
When I started, I was laying down like Edgar Cayce.
Mhm.
And then I did that for years, and I got bronchitis. And when I was laying down, all I could do was cough. They couldn't speak through me. So my assistant said to Theo, what can we do for Sheila, because of this coughing? And they said, tell her to sit up. Well, okay. So then I sat up, not thinking, oh, it had to be that way, and now it can be this way. So for years, I just sat, and Theo came through, eyes closed.
Mhm.
And Marcus came into my life at that time, and we were doing the sessions sitting up and eyes closed. And then we went to do an event in Asheville, North Carolina. I always get the Carolinas switched. And they opened my eyes. Now, they had tried it before, and it was too uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
And so they stopped that. But this particular day, they opened my eyes, and that was like, okay. And they started moving my hands.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 weeks later, we were doing an event in St. Louis, Missouri, and they stood me up.
Wow.
And so there was this progression of being one way for a time, and then it started changing very quickly after they opened my eyes.
Wow. Okay.
And then I became comfortable with it, and I don't even notice it anymore. But in the beginning, each one of these stages, it was like, what? You can do that? What? So it's just been this natural progression to the way I'm doing it today.
Wow.
And Marcus got to be with me in that opening, and he was like, okay, I guess this is what's happening now.
No,
What do you think?
Well, we had a certain way of doing our events, obviously, when Sheila was sitting down with her eyes closed. So when her eyes opened, it was, oh, wow, that's cool. But when she stood up, it was a whole nother game at that point. Now we had to change the way we presented and the way Theo interacted with the audience. And then, Jesse, it actually evolved to a place where Theo was giving outreach. So they would extend their hands, and there'd be these...
Wow.
Yeah, it was really quite remarkable. And now Sheila's kind of backed off that a little bit. And now it's more, when we do live events, for instance, I will abdicate my seat to the audience member so they could sit next to Sheila channeling Theo and have that personal interaction. But
Wow.
yeah, so it's been an evolution. It's been interesting, that's for sure.
That's really fascinating. I just recently watched back a video that I recorded with Vagrian, and at one point my cat comes into the room. And Vagrian's transmitting this way, and then the cat comes over to me, right? And Vagrian goes like this, and starts, like, I don't have my eyes open or anything, but Vagrian was interacting with the cat. It was so interesting to watch this back on the video. I was like, that is something very new. I did not know that happened. I didn't know that was possible. They've opened my eyes a couple times, but for you, it's just so uncomfortable. And it's distracting still at this point. So it's like, okay.
Sure.
Well, take its time and it'll be fine. But that's fascinating for me to hear about because I don't really have access to anyone who has this similar experience to me. So it's so cool to talk to.
It is fun to talk shop, so to speak.
Talk shop, yeah. When you first did start channeling, did you know what it was? Did it make sense or?
Well, I started out with automatic writing. And then I trance spontaneously. Like I said, I mean, I had a lot of really intense phenomena stuff happening as well. Did the automatic writing, trance spontaneously. And then the voice, direct voice came. But I just kept coming back to that commitment. And on the end, it was, my human person, my humanness said, whoa, this is a lot. But there was still that soul-centeredness of, okay, this is what you signed up for. But it's not to say that it wasn't off-putting to be sitting in the chair and when Spirit wanted to speak, when the angels wanted to talk, the chair actually being moved violently, like we're here, we want to talk.
Right, okay.
And I had my bed levitate in the middle of the night.
Whoa.
And some really physical phenomena that was showing me this was bigger than me. It was something that I wasn't doing.
The bed levitating, was this during like a period of resistance before you started or?
It was more to let me know, because I had such an analytical mind that I wanted to know this wasn't me.
Yeah.
I wanted some proof that this was something else. And so, boy, did they comply. It's desire. And, to prove to me that this was larger than just me. And many of us that are opening up today, as I'm sure you had the experience, question what it is, or am I making this up? I hear that from a lot of people. I think I'm just making it up. Well, I had that too. But I had so much evidence that it wasn't me, and they were showing me all the way along. It was, I'll use the word scary, but that's a little too large.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was more, my gosh, what is this about? And how do I work with it? Oh my gosh, I can't. It would turn me off to it. It really created more curiosity. Okay, now what? What's next? What's next? And, I've just had those confirmations right along, and it builds your trust. It builds evidence and trust to go along to the point I am today. It's just easy to invite Theo in because I have so much trust and so much evidence and confirmation and affirmation of what they've taught, what they've said, what's happened in my life along the way that they said would be happening, that happened, things they told me before the internet that are happening now. So, it's just building blocks.
So I asked Marcus earlier his relationship with Theo. And you just shared some of your relationship with them as well, the trust. And I understand that totally takes a little time to build up. You've been doing this a long time. So you do have that very long-term relationship with them. But what else? Because I'm just asking out of total curiosity. I hope my listeners will come along with me for this curious question. But my relationship with Dagrian is really interesting in that they tease me. They will put me in positions where, maybe I'll be the butt of the joke some of the time, or they'll do certain things because they're a very humorous energy that pushes me in the ways my buttons need to be pushed because they know my personality so well that they know I'm not going to listen to them directly. So they're going to, help me along my way in some other direction. So is your relationship, does it have any aspects or nuance that maybe people wouldn't know about that you'd love to share?
Well, I've been tested all along the way to trust them, as I think we all are at some point. But I can't think of anything specifically other than, when I started, this wasn't talked about openly. I didn't go into social situations and say, guess what I can do? Because people were fearful. And so they assisted me in all the ways of trusting. They were always giving me things that then were affirmed and confirmed externally in the world. I got things I couldn't have known of. Most of us couldn't have known of until they happened. And so I just had those ongoing daily confirmations that kept happening that built my trust without doubt, because there were just so many of them. And they were the small things, not only the large ones, but the small things on a daily basis that I couldn't discount. And, and they taught me. They taught me how to do this work in the way I'm doing it also. They directed me because I didn't have a mentor. And nobody I knew was doing this kind of stuff. And, the only book I could find about what was happening to me was an Edgar Cayce book, an early Edgar Cayce book. So they taught me all the way along.
That's beautiful.
And to develop. So now there's just so many avenues and opportunities to learn from that, which I'm happy for. And Theo did predict that too, that this time there would be these waves of awakening.
Well, sure. And you're part of that. You as Sheila also are a part of that for paving the way, for making it possible for someone like me to appear and people go, okay, I know what that is already. There are books about that. There are things about that. I can reference, what people are talking about. Now I can walk into a dinner party and people don't understand what the hell I'm talking about, but I can get there eventually by saying like, okay, so that some people can do this, and it's because of people like you. So I'm grateful. I think that's absolutely splendid. Yes.
Thank you.
And appreciate it deeply. I'd love you guys to share a little bit about your new book. I know you already have a book that you've written together as well, but this new book all about relationships, the art of relationship, the discovering magic of unconditional love. It's so exciting that this is coming out, or has already come out when this is being published, this episode. So can you share a little bit about why that's a passion project for you guys?
I have to let Marcus answer that because he's been the one that has been focused and editing, and he knows this book backwards and forwards for sure.
Well, it has been a labor. It's been a labor of love. And I think also one of the things, Jesse, that makes it so gratifying for us is the feedback that we get. So we have a new book coming out, which is the expanded edition of the book that you have. And when this airs, that book will be released and it'll be available. And we also have an audiobook, of course, with that as well. That's 99.9% of the way done. And we also have an online program. So we have a 12-hour video program that we created to accompany the book itself, or maybe the book accompanies the online video program, depending upon which one you find first. But the joy that we get, and we've done a beta launch, so this is like top of mind for me right now. We did a beta launch to 100 of our clients that spent 4 months engaging with the 12 modules, which have guided meditations, it has audio, it's got the MP3s, it's got the transcripts, it's got guided meditations, and it's got a beautiful playwork, journaling playwork, we call it, associated with each one of the modules. So you can take a look at the 12 chapters in the book, and you can, each one of those are about an hour-long video module. And there's all kinds of different experiences that people are having one-on-one with Theo throughout the program as well. But in the video, and all the feedback that we got in doing this beta launch, and we'll be launching this to the general public by the time, very close around the time this airs. The feedback we got was, in fact, we were talking about this morning, the ability to love ourselves has been the number one most important thing that has come out of this program. So it shifts people's perspectives on who they are. And when we start going through the chapters, and we encourage everybody to listen to the first 4 chapters first, our story is aspirational just in terms of the multidimensional experiences that we go through in the first module or the first chapter. But then we go into the sacred self. We go into soul integration, a path to loving yourself. We go into how loving yourself changes everything in chapter 4. And in creating those and positioning them in the book where we did, it then creates and builds a foundation for everything to come and all of the various expressions and forms that relationships take on. And the other bit of feedback that we've received has been a profound shift in perspective. So once we start to understand who we really are, then we can really start to understand how we show up in all the relationships in our lives. And back to your original, one of your first questions about holding boundaries, we find that, again, a lot of the common feedback we received on this was, I'm a different person. I can hold my boundaries. I can show up. I can be vulnerable. I don't have to have that fear of abandonment anymore, or, be attached to the good opinions of others, the acceptance of good opinions of other people. None of that all kind of melts away once we start to build this foundation. And so that's been super gratifying for us as we're getting ready to launch this out to the world. And that's, and there's a number of other components that we can, that you'll find out when you go to our website and you start to explore a little bit about, what we're doing, what else is available. But it's pretty exciting. It's a fun time right now to get this out to the world.
It's amazing. Yeah, it sounds so wonderful. And I do want to direct people directly to your website, which is www.asktheo.com, because you're offering a free meditation for whoever heads over there and signs up. They can download that right away from Theo. And what is called Raising Your Vibrational Frequency, correct?
It is that. It's a super fun experiential meditation. It's one of our most popular meditations. We give it away because it takes you into a different vibration. As you listen to this meditation with Theo, you come out of it almost floating. It's been my personal experience of it. There's such a lightness of being because of the vibrational frequency of Theo's voice, of course, speaking through Sheila, and the accompanying music, which is done with a very dear friend of ours by the name of John Seri, who's a brilliant composer of ambient electronic music. And then there's the neuro-linguistic impact that Theo's words have. Mm-hmm. As they're guiding us to raising our vibrational frequency. So it's a fun, pretty cool gift. And all you got to do is come to AskTheo.com and it's right there for you. And then we'll be able to share with you more about what we're doing.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to feel as good as the three of us do right now, then head over there right away and get that vibrational meditation so that you can pop up your frequency and sort of meet us where I feel like the three of us are quite high vibe right now in this now moment.
Indeed.
Listen, guys, I love the fact, I love this interview. I absolutely love this interview. I love the work that you're doing. I'm so in awe of you. I'm in awe of you relationally. I'm in awe of your work and the way that you're touching so many people, the impact you're having on the world. And I'm so grateful that you guys, allowed me to have this time with you. Wow, it's just wonderful.
Well, we've enjoyed being with you very much, Jesse.
Yeah.
And look forward to another time together.
Yeah, I'm sure eventually we will be.
Very, very grateful, Jesse. Thanks so much for having us. It's been great.
My last question for you guys, and I'd like you both to answer if you can, is what does the word mystic mean to you?
Magic. To me, mystical experiences, magical experiences is how we should live on a daily basis. I like both those words.
Well, I love this question, Jesse. I would answer it by saying multidimensional.
Beautiful.
Experiencing ourselves is so much more than our physical bodies.
Beautiful. So let's wish all of the listeners to have a multidimensional, magical, mystical day.
Indeed.
I agree.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Jesse. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining me on the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. I hope that you gain some wisdom and enlightenment from these amazing transmissions and from the light and love that are Sheila and Marcus and their gorgeous relationship. It is such a pleasure and an honor that they chose to share their experience with us. And what a wonderful episode it was. Remember to check out my upcoming events in Boulder and in Florida. If you're interested in a discount for the Colorado event, use the coupon code SKOM10 and you will have a special discount at checkout. I can't wait to share with you again in the next episode of Some Kind of Mystic. And until then, have an absolutely amazing and magical life.
I'll tell you something funny for me personally. When you were talking about our relationship to Theo, one of my greatest joys in life is when Theo makes me their straight man. And you were talking about becoming the brunt of Fagrian's jokes or positioning you in particularly funny spaces and experiences. When Theo makes me their straight man, and I'm the brunt of their jokes, and they are working on their sense of humor, they've told us, I fill up with so much joy and so much love, even though I'm being made fun of by Theo. It's pretty cool, actually.